because we were talking about mathematics and how it engages specific circuitry in the brain. So I guess we're now going to a bit other circuitry, which is language, which is just, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, if I leave it like this, will you see something, or is it too annoying? I think otherwise it's just going to keep jumping. Sorry. So what we're dealing with in our current project is transitions between words. If it sounds a bit unfamiliar right now, I'm going to explain what it means in a second. Until then, please just bear with me. I'm just going to briefly outline the talk before I throw into everything. We're going to have a short introduction, which is going to introduce typical approach to study of language processing in the brain. And I'm going to put your attention to some of the concerns about this typical approach that we are dealing with in our group. And I'm going to introduce our approach to these studies. Then we're going to move on to the transitions between words and what we mean by them and which ones we used in our paradigm. I'm going to present you the design of a novel test that we did for our paradigm, which is going to lead us to the results we currently have. I'm going to spoil this right away. The study is currently ongoing, so the results are very preliminary. But let's just start with understanding associative neural mechanisms that underlie language processing in the brain still remains research challenge up to this day. And what usually happens in traditional research that addresses this issue so far is that the studies are dealing mostly with what I start calling notional violations. So what happens when we're trying to study language processing in the brain is we have text, usually it's sentences, that introduce some kind of violation. Either it's semantic violation or syntactic violation. And when readers come across the violations, this triggers specific type of ERPs in the brain, which are typically reported as so-called language processing ERPs in the brain. What I mean by that is, here's an example of one of them. We have sentences like this one. So wiped cream tastes scared. So the scared marked in red is, in this case, a semantic violation, because I guess we all know from our own experience that wiped cream cannot taste scared, right? So when reader comes across this violation, what happens is the so-called ERPs. So the black here is the baseline, which would be when we see the word, the normal grammatical sentence, something like wiped cream tastes, I guess it tastes sweet, right? So this would be the black, so nothing special happens. But when violation is introduced, we get higher negativity. So it's ERP, so negative is plotted upwards, positive is plotted downwards. And this is then reported as so-called semantic ERP, that denotes semantic processing, and it has a name, N per 100, denoting that it peaks around 400 milliseconds. However, we are a bit skeptical about this approach because we believe that it doesn't really present language as it is. Like, we don't see this kind of sentences in our everyday life. We don't use them. We use them maybe when we learn a language, but this is something else, right? So for that reason, we wanted to introduce new paradigms that would not involve any kind of violations. And it would also include self-paced reading, because what happens in most of this research, because we need to somehow map them, is that it's presented in one word at a time manner. So you have a sentence, but it's actually presented like you see wiped, then for a certain amount of milliseconds, then you see the next word, and so on. So this kind of rapid reading, we're trying to step away from that. And we also wanted to have a task that would give participants high motivation to do it and would keep them engaged throughout the thing, because I don't know how many of you regularly take parts in experiments like PhD students abroad do. We are constantly being used, and they're super boring. So after a while, you get really frustrated with doing the task. So for that reason, we also wanted to keep it fun. So we developed new ERP paradigm that took all of this into account. And through that, we wanted to approach the understanding of associative neural mechanisms that underlie language processing through transitions between words. So we asked ourselves whether it's possible to distinguish among the brain signatures of different types of these transitions, because this has been previously hypothesized in the paper that I quoted here and several others, but this is the main one. But this is all computational neuroscience, and it has thus far never been approached in experimental setup. So we wanted to put this into the lab and see if it holds also in this kind of setups. So by transitions between words, what I mean is you have a word, and then you do something to that word, and you get a new word. Okay? Both of these are grammatically correct words. They are words, not non-words or pseudo-words. They're grammatical correct words, in our case in Italian, because I work in Italy and our participants are Italians. So the transitions we used were 7 of them. The first one was letter addition. So basically what it means, you have a word like auto, you add 1 letter, and you get avuto, which is a new word, Italian word, a normal word. The second transition was letter change. Similarly, you just change one of the letters in the word to produce a new word. The third one was letter omission. So you take one letter away and you get a new word. Please don't ask me what these words mean, because my Italian is really, really bad. Then we have an anagram. So basically, you shuffle positions of the letters in the word and you get a new word. The fifth one was synonym, which I think we all know what it means. So we just have a word that means the same and the opposite of it. So antonym, word meaning the exact opposite. Or words that are semantically relating among themselves, like eggs and chicken. And the way to put this into experimental setup was basically based on a pre-existing game. So thankfully for us, lots of work has been done by authors of a very popular Italian enigmatic magazine, which has been around for decades. And this game is really, really popular. Everyone knows it, everyone plays it. It comes out, I think, monthly. It's called Il Bersaglio. The way this game works is you start from the indicated word, in this case, indizio, and then you need to follow one of those 7 types of transition to find the next word in the sequence. So either it's a synonym of the indicated word, or it's an antonym, or so on, and you need to cross it out. And there's only, this is very important, there's only one word that only corresponds to one rule that is correct. Everything else is wrong. And your goal is to basically cross out all the words in the scheme. And I guess we were super lucky for the second time, because putting this into a computer setup would be a bit of a pain. But someone did it for us already. Because the game was so popular, it has been turned into a computer game by a man called Franco Ceccherini. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. In this, in my opinion, very ugly 90s design. But luckily, it produced what was very important for us, which was list of words already existing, already in the correct sequence. So we were basically able, because he was very friendly and shared this with us, we were able to take the lists, just slightly transform them so that it fitted our needs. And we produced something else which is not prettier, but at least it's not in screaming green. So this was our experimental setup. It's pretty much similar to what he did. The participants always start from the word that is indicated in the bottom right, and then they need to follow the 7 transition rules to find the next word in this grid. Like in this case, we have improperio, and if you take the E away, you get improprio. And if they select it correctly, this is indicated with a green word, color, and now they're working from this word, and they need to find the next transition. If they get it wrong, the word turns red. So it's slightly easier than the magazine one, because there you don't have any feedback, whereas here you know right away whether you got it right or not. And our participants play 12 rounds of this game. In each round, they see 28 words. And these words latch onto one another through 7 types of transitions. The goal for them is to find the correct sequence, so basically to turn all the words into green and to move quickly to the next round. And yeah, participants love this game. Like they really loved coming to the lab and share the word about it, so it was a very popular thing a few months ago. Our participants were 20 native Italian speakers. 10 of them took part in behavioral study, while 10 took part in the EEG study, and they were aged between 22 and 30. The results we obtained so far in the behavioral part of the experiment, which was basically done to test the validity of the task, we're able to obtain different reaction times per type of transitions, which are significantly different between each other. Also, if we take into consideration, I started grouping them at some point. So this part, I started calling them semantic transitions, because they all have to do with meaning of the words, versus word form transitions, which are those ones. And also, if you have a look individually between the slowest and the fastest transition, there's like factor 2 of the difference between the two. So this gave us hope to have a look into the brain, what's going on there. And this is very preliminary. It was just obtained a few days before I came here, so excuse not having the proper results at this point. But here in red, we have an average of 2 of the word form transitions, in this case letter omission and letter addition, contrasted with, in blue, the average of a semantic transition. So we have semantic relation and synonym. So what we can see is there's several things that I would like to point out, but really it's just speculation at this point. First thing we can notice that here there's basically no significance difference between the two, which we're guessing might be correlated to the click, maybe, because 0 is time of the click, and what we're interested in is basically time before the click, so pre-stimulus period. because we want to see if there is possible to distinguish this moment when they realize which transitions they need, which transition they have in mind. But just before the click and just after the click, there's no difference, basically. We're thinking this might be either basically motor cortex being active and doing the click, and afterwards maybe some sort of relaxation when, I got it right, so now I can relax and I can slowly move on. And then the other interesting part is this part here, so between, I guess, 900 to 400 milliseconds before the click, where there is significant difference between the two broader categories, so between between letter transitions and semantic types of transitions. And we're hoping this might lead us forward to find something more here, but a lot remains to be done in terms of analysis here. So just to conclude, unfortunately, study is currently still ongoing, so the results are what they are at this point. But the preliminary results that I presented show differences in the mean reaction times among different types of transitions, and also differences in ERPs are already being observed that give us hope there's something more to look into here. And we're hoping this gives us some important steps towards relating observable signals to hypothesized mechanisms in models of latching dynamics, which have been around for a few years now. And we're also hoping that this is going to help us advance understanding of semantic transitions. In particular, it could lead towards refinement of neurally plausible models of language processing. And that's all from my side. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.